Today in the Twin Cities Business Show, we are talking Dairy Queen. We've got Jane Friedrich with us to tell us more about how new Blizzard flavors are born, the science of food, and whether you will ever see a mango sticky rice blizzard. Welcome to the Twin Cities Business Show. We are here today with Jane Friedrich, the EVP of Research and Development for Dairy Queen, one of my favorite companies, probably one of your favorite companies too. Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Very glad to have you. So let's talk blizzards. You are, one of the people who's in charge of helping to come up with new blizzard flavors, making all that stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
Take me through the process, for example, of creating the new strawberry angel food cake blizzard this year from the inside.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through the process of creating not just a blizzard, but any food items that we have at Dairy Queen. So we'll talk about the strawberry angel food cake blizzard. Sorry, got to get the name correct. Really, it starts with understanding consumers and insights and understanding what are people looking for. So we can't launch something unless somebody wants it, right? So there has to be a need in the market. And so we do a lot of gathering of insights to get information as to what flavors are emerging, what are the trends that are coming up, and really understand are those things that we want to hit on. And then we'll do concept screeners and we'll see which concepts actually rise to the top. And then we'll take those and we'll create flavors and we'll research them until we get them really great. So we call it Blizzard Good. And so we'll get those really great and then before we can launch it. And so we will take time to make sure that the product is excellent. It scores really well. It hits the product concept fit. It is delivering on what consumers actually expect from a strawberry angel food cake blizzard in this case. And really before we would actually take it to launch. And so that's really kind of the creative behind it. But it really starts with researching and understanding consumer needs and what are consumers looking for. Because there's a lot of options out there today. And so we want to make sure that we're giving options that are unique to us, that fit with our brand, but also will deliver on consumers and our consumers what they want.
So you guys launched 3 seasonal blizzard flavors this summer.
Yes.
At the beginning of that process, how many flavors are you starting with in the beginning?
Oh, we start with so many. I mean, I can't actually put a number on it. So really what we start with is the concept. What are we going after? And so one thing we have in market right now is our breakfast collection. And so our breakfast collection is a shake. It's the Fruity Pebbles shake. It's a dipped cone. It's the Cinnamon Toast Crunch dip cone. And then it's a blizzard. It's Choco Frosted Donut Blizzard. And so there we really started with a concept of bringing breakfast to life in a different day part. And so what would that look like? And that's across different types of products as well. And so what we really do is we start with those high level. And so that was one concept, but we had many concepts. And so we were looking at what hits with consumers and what are they looking for that would be unique and what really delivers a great taste as well. And so we're always looking at things, and I couldn't actually give you a number. Somebody asked me the other day, we've got this thing called the freezer. I don't know if you've heard of the freezer, which
Tell us
is
about it.
blizzards that we've launched in the past. So sometimes they're fan favorites. You'll hear us refer to them as bringing things out of the freezer, and we'll bring them back. There's over 100 different recipes that we've launched in the past that we keep in the freezer that can always come back at a different time. And so, for example, some of those items that we've got coming up, which we normally come out with, would be our cotton candy blizzard, as well as our s'mores blizzard. So those are blizzards that we had launched years ago. They had been on menus. They went away for a while. And then fan feedback was, hey, we really want to see these back. And so we brought them back out of the freezer.
So, you're kind of in charge of helping to come up with new concepts, ways of executing new things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you also have this wonderful legacy brand with all these things from the past that people love. How do you balance creating new stuff with when to pull the old stuff back out?
It's a great question. And so we really do try and balance it. So first of all, you got to understand what are the trends and what are consumers looking for. So sometimes consumers are really looking for that nostalgic, bring back my favorites. And, in some instances, you can look at what we've done as a brand, and we do bring the S'mores Blizzard back almost annually. But there's been times when we didn't bring it back annually, and we heard from our fans, hey, wait, we really want that back. But then there's also times where it's like they're looking for that new, something different, something to get them to try a different taste. But it's also safe because they know it's Dairy Queen. They know what to expect. They know it's going to be good. We're not going to put something out in the market that does not test well. We do a lot of testing prior. And so we really do focus on making sure that it delivers on that concept. And so I do think it's it's, if you're craving something, it's a great place to come because the products are good.
What are some of the big emerging trends that you feel like are driving a lot of the work that you guys are doing right now?
That's a really good question. So I think, we continually hear about, for us, we continually hear about what are the new flavors? How are you staying relevant in the flavors? I think some of the emerging trends are people are eating differently now. And so, they just are eating differently. Now we were talking about this earlier, like what's a breakfast food? And so what do you consider breakfast food? People tend to eat mini meals, so there's more snacking involved. So those are some of the trends that are affecting us. I think obviously the protein trend is out there, and so we continue to look at that. And we have a lot of protein offerings. We've got chicken strips, we've got burgers, we've got some great protein options that we offer as well.
So you guys have, historically, I feel like people think about Dairy Queen and they think about ice cream. And you guys have all these
Yes.
other offerings, right?
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit more about how you balance the sort of legacy and the association that people have with sort of some of your core products, things like the Blizzard, with you've been in hot food for a long time, and how
Mhm.
much you lean into that, and how you balance those two things as a company.
Yeah, so I mean, my team balances it. We pay just as much attention to food as we pay to treat side of the business, and so we call food our food
Hmm.
side, right? And I think that really what it is it's not one over the other, it's both, right? And so we do really try and find great pairings of products as well. And so this year, one example, this year we launched a spicy chicken strip, but we also launched it with a new beverage platform. And so we launched sparkling sparklers, which are sparkling lemonades, as well as coolers, which are kind of it's a lemonade with soft serve mixed in it as well. And so those products really launched and paired very well with the spicy offerings that we launched from a food perspective. And so really trying to find those opportunities in order to have products that come together in order to deliver a great experience as well. And so I think, we'll never Dairy Queen is always going to be known to many as the place to go get a treat, right? But we're also trying to make sure that we have offerings for people who want something else more substantial at the same time.
So one of the other things that's very interesting about this, you have a PhD in food science,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then you have, this legacy brand over here. And can you just take us through the science of how something like the, spicy chicken comes to life?
There's a lot more science in food than people think. And I don't think people actually realize that, cooking is chemistry, right? And so when you're developing food, it's not just about going in the kitchen and pulling some spices here and there. It's really understanding, what chemical reactions are happening, right? And so if you want toast, for example, you want a great piece of toast, you want it to be golden brown. Most people at least want it to be golden brown. You want it to be golden brown, and that's a Maillard reaction, which is a chemical reaction that's actually happening. And so my team is a team of scientists that actually understands all of that information. And so if they're creating a new chicken strip, they're looking at how does that coating work on that chicken strip. In blizzards, a great example is making sure that the inclusions hold up with when you make a blizzard. So if anybody's made a blizzard before, there's a lot of people out there, their first jobs were at Dairy Queen, or maybe their second or third, or maybe they're still working there. There's a lot of force that goes into making a blizzard. And so those pieces of angel food cake, which we were just talking about earlier, the strawberry angel food cake blizzard, they need to not disintegrate when you are mixing it.
You got to have the chunks.
You gotta have the
You
chunks,
have to have the
otherwise it doesn't
chunks.
deliver,
It
right?
would ruin the whole
It doesn't
thing.
taste like
Yeah.
an angel food cake if you don't have
Right.
the trunks. So, really making sure the science behind that so that it actually holds up in the soft serve ice cream and through the blending process. So, there's a lot more science involved than you would think.
Yeah. Um, Take me through, the Oreo Blizzard. The Oreo Blizzard, I think historically has been one of your top
Yep,
sellers. It's still your top seller.
number one.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's been number one for a long time, like decades, right?
Mhm.
So what does your team do with that? Is it something where you say, we're not going to touch that, it's going well, we're not going to change anything? Do you try to make refinements? Do you even need to do research on that? Or do you just say, everybody's buying these, they love them, we're not changing them ever, go forth?
That's a great question. And so using Oreo as an example. So Oreo, we don't make an Oreo. We buy the Oreos from the manufacturer. But Oreo did quite a few years ago, go through reformulation. And so when they reformulated their Oreo, we needed to go and double check that it still worked and delivered on the same within our Oreo Blizzard. So we needed to go make sure portioning was correct. The other products that were going in there with it still delivered on that Oreo Blizzard
That was probably a big moment for you guys having to, Oreo comes out with a new design and you're like, we got to make sure this fits.
for all products. So I mean, I think people don't realize how much manufacturers are reformulating products. So you'll see, sometimes you see on the packaging now with less sugar or, different fat sometimes, and those are the retail products. And we do use, I mean, we work with those same companies but on their food side service side of the business, but a lot of those reformulations that they do on the retail will also hit the food service side. So yeah, we just need to always make sure that we're maintaining the integrity of our products, and doing that we need to make sure that the integrity of the input ingredient is there as well.
Yeah. So, GLP-1s,
Hmm.
huge trend
Yeah.
that's sort of rocking the whole food system right
Hmm.
now. How are you guys looking at that as just a general category and how it's impacting some of your business?
GLP-1, yeah, it is impacting, I would say, most industries right now, and we're continuing to watch it and see what the effects of the industry are.
Great, great, great. I want to ask a little bit more about your background. You were
Sure.
at Cargill for a long time. You
Mhm.
came over to Dairy Queen. Take me through a little bit of your Cargill career and how that kind of prepared you for the one that you have now.
Sure, sounds great. Yeah, so I joined Cargill as a bench scientist from graduate school, actually. So I joined as a bench scientist and was working there as a flavor chemist, actually, understanding why things taste and smell the way that they do, and really worked across all of the different divisions of Cargill. So for people who don't know Cargill, it's a large organization. At the time when I joined, it's transitioned a lot, but at the time I joined, it was over 60 business units. So, which meant that it was 60 different businesses. They had a variety of different product lines. And so worked on those. I worked my way up from a bench scientist across different aspects of the food industry at Cargill. So I worked in um, our applications teams. I worked in our protein businesses. I worked in our global protein businesses. I worked in our Cargill's. Sorry, it's hard to say, not say our
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
were there for so many years. I'm not there any longer. And then I worked across their core, what was called core research, which was their longer term research team, which supported across all. And then I also worked in animal nutrition before I came to Dairy Queen. And so when I was looking, I'd been there a long time and it was, had a really good career. Cargill is an interesting company because you can be there and have a lot of different careers because there's so many different businesses. Whereas in a lot of industries, you have to switch companies in order to really have experience of a different company or a different business. So different product types. And so when I was reflecting on my career, I'd been there 24 years almost. And I was reflecting on my career and thinking, well, what do I want to do next? Because I never thought when I joined Cargill that I would be there that long. I don't think anybody expects that when you join a company. And I started reflecting on where did I have the most fun in my career? And one of the roles that I had was working with in the protein food service business. And that was really supporting a lot of across all the food service industry and a lot of QSRs. And it was just great timing because Dairy Queen was looking for EVP of research and development at that time. And so started having conversations, and it was a great fit. And I'm really excited to be at Dairy Queen.
That's great.
Yeah.
There's an interesting angle to this, which is just you worked within two very interesting corporate structures, right?
Hmm.
Cargill's one of, if not the biggest private company in the world. Dairy Queen is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, which is
Hmm.
a fascinating company, and it's been sort of a huge part of their portfolio for a while. Um, how has how have those two things changed the way that you work, the culture of the organizations, or things like that? Or is it anything that you've even noticed?
That's a really good question. I think at the heart of it, both are Minnesota based companies and have a lot of the same values. And so I think from that aspect of things, changing from a large organization that was privately held to Dairy Queen, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company, really culturally was not that different, quite frankly. I think the difference was really understanding, the size, the scope. At Dairy Queen, working with franchisees, the importance of our franchisees because we are a franchise system, and making sure that you build those relationship with franchisees. We can only succeed if our franchisees succeed, and so that's really important. And those are kind of, I think, the bigger differences.
Yeah. Just thinking about that franchisee question, a blizzard is only as good as the person who makes the blizzard, right?
Yes.
You have to really nail
Mhm.
it. So, how do you guys integrate with the frontline staffers who are the ones that are actually constructing the things? And how much does their feedback or expertise get built back into the system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my team does not work in a silo. So R&D is working continuously with our operations teams as well as our supply chain team, our marketing team, etc. And so before we get anything to launch in a store, we actually do need to work with, we have a team internally called our Operations Center of Excellence, and we work with that team. So that team is the bridge between research and development or our corporate stores and our franchise locations. And we do have two corporate Dairy Queen locations where we can go in and test product as well. And so that's where we really go in and fine tune and tweak formulations and make sure that they're going to work. And we get feedback from those operators, which are corporate stores, but we also do testing in stores. And additionally, we have things called franchisee advisory councils. And so we've got advisory councils where we bring franchisees in. So they sit on these councils and they advise us. So if we're thinking of something, we run it past our franchisees. They're part of that as well because they are the ones that are working in the stores day in and day out. And so getting their input is extremely valuable to us.
Yeah. A lot of very dramatic things have happened with food costs really since
Mhm.
2020. COVID
Yeah.
hit, between that and tariffs and everything else.
Mhm.
Input costs of things are changing pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
So, how has that impacted the work that you do? And how, are there any examples of things that have, say, skyrocketed in price that have forced you to sort of change the way that you guys work?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, we don't set pricing at the stores. Our franchisees set their pricing. We try and monitor. We've got a great team in our supply chain team that actually is the one who's responsible for working with suppliers to try and mitigate any large swings in input costs, like you said. I think that anyone who's watching the markets knows that cocoa prices were a little out of control for a while there. We worked with our suppliers to really understand and get ahead of those. And so that was really our supply chain team that really took the lead on that.
Got it. So there's never a situation where somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, we need to figure out a way to use less cocoa," or we need to any of that type of thing.
We haven't really I mean, our suppliers sometimes come and say, "Hey, we're looking at so if we're creating a new cone coating, for example, this would just be an example. There could be a way to use maybe less cocoa powder in that cone coating that would still deliver the same, but we did not do that with our chocolate coating. But
Got it.
just as that would be something you
Yep.
could do. We did not do.
Interesting. Um, you know, are there any products that you have sort of entered into the beginning parts of the research
Mhm.
cycle that you were like, "This is going to kill it. This is going to be great. It's going to be awesome," and it's just fizzled during audience research?
Um, there's always a couple that surprise where you think, okay, this is going to do really well. This concept is going to test really, really well. And then the concept just does not test as well as you would think it would with consumers. I think the other side of things that we see is where we test products and then we launch them and they go viral. And they like blow it out of the water, which we had, you can't anticipate. You don't know what's going to go
Yeah.
viral.
What's an
I know that
example of
there's a
that?
lot of so one example would be the crunch and cookie cone dip that we launched. It was not this past spring, but the spring prior, and it was launched, and it was um, it was great. And then all of a sudden, it was 2 days after launch, and all of a sudden, we started seeing all this social media postings on, okay, so they're making a crunch and cookie blizzard, and we're making a crunch and cookie parfait, and oh, we want a side of the crunch and cookie so I can dip my blizzard into it. And so the teams got together very fast in order to help our franchisees bring that to life in stores. So create product preps, give them some buttons on their point of sale system so that they could actually sell it appropriately as well and track those sales. I mean, our franchisees, they were great. They were leaning in already, but we helped them just bring it and make sure that we had some standardization to what is the product prep for a crunch and cookie blizzard.
So you basically you take all of the best science and scientists that you guys have, you set up this perfect scientific process, you release something into the wild, and then social media is kind of a big driver of
Yep.
where things go from there. How are you monitoring that? I mean, are you getting reports? How are you making sure you're not being overly reactive? Like how does that side of the business work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we do have a social team. So we do that team is listening, so doing social listening to understand. We also work with some third parties to understand what's happening where. Um, and it's all about listening, seeing what's hitting where. And I think the challenge is to not assume that everything's going to go viral. Right. And so sometimes we have conversations where, we're developing new things. It's like, well, what if this goes viral? It's like, well, if it, we're, if it does, that's great, and we will deal with it then. Some things where we're a little bit more ahead of it, so we've got some, now with cone dips, we know, okay, here's if a cone dip goes viral, here's some other types of products you can turn it into fairly quickly.
Got it. I want to dig into your academic background a little bit.
Okay,
You in school studied cherries.
for a short time, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I, for my master's degree, did a research project on cherries, so sweet and sour cherries, and was looking at fresh cherries, dried cherries, cherry juice, cherry jam, cherry ale, pretty much anything you could do with a cherry in a processing plant. I did, and then was looking at the impact of that for certain class of compounds in the cherries, which were non-anthocyanin containing phenolic compounds. And so was really looking and extracting those and trying to understand, are there different cherries that have more of those types of compounds in them or not?
And then you got a PhD.
Yes.
And what were you studying there?
So for my PhD, I did my PhD in flavor chemistry. And so my PhD for flavor chemistry, there's different ways of looking and analyzing. So it was really more on the analytical flavor chemistry side of things and understanding how people, everybody knows everybody has a different sense of taste and smell, right? So something that I think the classic is cilantro, right? So you either love cilantro or you hate cilantro, right? And that's because of a gene. So that is a gene. So it either makes it taste like soap or it makes it taste really great. And so with respect to that, one of the ways that you measure in flavor chemistry is through a methodology called gas chromatography olfactometry, which is a combination of a chemical detector and a human detector, a nose. But to compare results against each other, because people have different sense of smell, you need to have a set of compounds in order to do that. So developed a way to screen and standardize results with this standard set of odorants.
Wow. So, looking at Dairy Queen again, when
Mhm.
I take a bite of a Dairy Queen soft serve cone, I am
Yes.
transported back to summers a long time ago after a baseball game,
Mhm.
right? Why does that happen in my brain?
I think it's the core memory that was made, right? And so it's those core memories, and Dairy Queen for many of us has been part of that. And it is that place where you went after the baseball game and you got to get a soft serve cone, and it's that sweet vanilla that's the great tasting, and it has an awesome texture, and it holds a curl and it looks so great. We have a great cone as well. I don't know.
I do like your
It
cone.
really does have a good cone, right? And so I think it's just those core memories that you form and then you associate that with things. I mean, similarly with think about growing up and you'd go visit your grandparents' house if you had
Mhm.
that opportunity. Every house has a smell. You probably can relate smells to those
My
as
grandma
well.
had dilly bars in the freezer actually at
Oh,
all
I love
times.
your
Yep.
grandma.
Yep.
So yeah. But yes, so I think it's just that core memory, and Dairy Queen has been a core memory for a lot of individuals.
So how do you pull those out and how do you tap into those? How do you find the little after the baseball game
Mhm.
moments of a long time ago and use those now to sort of drive sales in a real
Honestly,
sense?
that's our marketing team.
Hmm.
And so and our marketing team really understands, and it's not about, it's understanding what is the need for a consumer and what are they looking for. And so I do think as people shift, I think people are online more now. They're not as I don't have kids who played baseball, so I don't really know, but do people go out after those games as much? I'm not sure. And so, but our marketing team is the one who's really responsible for looking at those trends of consumer behavior and then understanding, okay, as consumer behavior changes, what do we as a brand need to do in order to help grow with them and change?
Yeah. Um, Several years ago, you guys introduced a smaller Blizzard flavor,
The
the
mini
mini.
blizzard.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So you weren't at the company, but
I was not there. No.
just thinking about that decision,
Mhm.
how does something like that happen and come up, and where does that type of thing come from within the
Yeah.
company?
A lot of it is consumer feedback. So we get feedback from our fans where they're giving us feedback and saying, oh, I love a blizzard, but it's just so much.
Yeah.
And we were also watching consumer behavior where people would come in and buy a large blizzard, but it was too much. And so what they would do is they would ask for other cups and they would, create smaller portions for their kids so everybody could have it. But you always had to have one flavor that way, right? And so they're like, it would be great if we could get a smaller portion so that my children could get their favorite flavors versus having today is my son's pick, tomorrow's my daughter's pick, whereas each person got their own flavor, and so that's kind of how the mini became a thing.
Got it. What about
And it's
pop?
my favorite too,
Good.
actually.
Good. Good.
I do love the mini because
Yeah.
it's a great size.
What about pop cups? I have a dog. Several people in my family have dogs. Everybody loves pop cups. How does something like that enter the business?
So we're a human food company, and so we really don't, pup cups. They're not a menu item because our items are human for
Mhm.
humans, and so that really would be up to the discretion of you as a consumer if you want to give your dog a pup cup.
Yep. Understood. I will take that under advisement. But Larry will probably keep getting pop cups
Yeah.
under my own discretion.
Which is
Understood.
Yeah.
The Where do you feel like the company in the next couple years is headed?
I think the company in the next couple of years, it's on the same trajectory we're on now, which is really to grow and grow in food and treat, right? So it's maintaining treat, continuing to look at what are the new things that are coming, what are consumers' expectations. Consumer behaviors are changing, so we want to make sure that we understand that, stay relevant to consumer expectation and treat, but also give great food options too. I think I think if you look at Dairy Queen as a system, we have a lot of different types of stores across the US, Canada, and then internationally as well. Some locations we only have treats, we don't offer food, and then other areas we do offer food. And so where we do offer food, which for some consumers, if you grew up in some parts of the country, if we're talking about the US, they don't think of Dairy Queen as a place where you can get food as well because they didn't grow up with a Dairy Queen that had food. And so I think understanding, what our consumer wants in products. And really for us, it's making sure that we are delivering the best products, whether across both food and treat. And so we spend a lot of time looking at, like I said earlier, individual input products. So if we're looking at our food side of the business, and if you are looking at a hamburger, for example, all of those individual ingredients that are going into that hamburger, the bun, the individual condiments, any topping, obviously the hamburger patty itself, we are looking at those as an individual component first and making sure that it's the best product that we can get and then pulling it together into the best build as well to deliver the best taste. And so I think as a brand, it's really staying on that path and making sure that we are delivering the best products out there.
I just digging in on that international expansion
Yeah.
piece, right? You guys have expanded. A bunch of the expansion recently has been in Asia. Are food tastes and trends similar there? Are they looking for sort of American Dairy Queen products? Are they looking for something different? How is all that shaken out?
Yeah, so internationally, we in most of our international markets, we are a treat only market. So not Canada. Canada, we do have food as well.
Canadians do love food.
Well, yeah. but I would say, but it's an international market.
Yeah,
Canada's international. But so if you were to visit in Mexico, you can't get food. Now, that being said, in Bahamas, we just opened up a food location.
Mm.
So, which is really exciting. And so most international locations are treat only, but we do have some food locations, like I said, where we're growing and starting to open them. And then also in Asia and China, we have some food as well. And so our strategy really is Dairy Queen is, as you know it's the same great tasting soft serve in those locations, but a lot of the flavors are localized. So we have favorite flavors that are localized to those markets, which you can only get in those markets.
That's an example.
So one example, obviously in Thailand, we have mango a lot. So think about mango sticky rice, right? So
That sounds great.
it is great. And I highly recommend going there to get some. So it is a seasonal flavor there, but it is, so it's a mango sticky rice blizzard is what you can get.
Mango sticky rice blizzard.
Yes.
That sounds incredible.
Yes.
Would you ever bring things that are successful there back here?
We do actually. So we do look at them, what's been successful there, and look at it would it be a fit here in the US markets or Canadian markets as well? And we do testing on those to actually understand what consumers buy them, what are the trends. And so again, it's, consumers, I have kids, what they eat as kids is very different than what I ate as a child. And so as tastes change, because we're just more international now than we used to ever be, right? And so understanding what those those changes in taste desires are and how does our menu interact with that is really important. So we do look at those flavors that we've launched other areas and say, is there a fit? Is there some tweaks that we might make to that in order to have it be something that could actually come to market here in the US and Canada as well?
Really interesting. So you have kids.
Yes.
For you and people on your team, you probably get a fair amount of feedback from people in your lives, be it your kids or something else. Yes, a lot. How do you factor that in, if at all? Does people in your life mentioning something to you, I don't want to put you on the spot where you're going to get a bunch of text messages, but how is that anecdotal stuff from people fed back into the process?
Honestly, I can't develop something for what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just take my kids out of it, or even
Yeah.
people that are reaching out to me, because I'm one consumer. We need to understand what all consumers want and trying to develop to that. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to like every single Blizzard flavor that we launch or
Yeah.
every single product we launch. But on our menu, you should have a variety of products that you can choose from, of things where you're like, oh, yes, I really love that one. Now, this other one, great to try, it might not become your favorite, your personal favorite, but we're really looking at what kind of goes across the general population is going to be a popular item.
So what I'm
So it
hearing
can't
is-
be
yeah.
me. So I say a lot in meetings, I'm like, okay, I personally love this, but we need to get some data to understand if others love this.
Yeah.
It's not just about me.
So you're too nice to say it, so I will stop texting her your feedback with the ideas because it's not working. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really fun to be here and get to know you a little bit and talk a little bit about Dairy Queen
This
and
was
food.
great.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much as well to Keely Doyle, Gabe Noah, Connor O'Neill, Mike Novak, and Ali Alt for all of your help behind the scenes. We will see you next time.